The way that I see this whole timeline shifting stuff, becoming a new identity stuff, is very, very simple. You have an old identity, or you have, let's just say, an identity, right? My assumption is that if you're watching this, you're probably somebody that's already decently successful, right? Maybe you figured a couple of things out. You have a 7, 8, 9-figure business possibly, right? You're, prolific in the entertainment sphere, whatever sphere you operate in. I'm assuming you figured something out. Yet there are old patterns, there are old behaviors, there are old kind of loops that you go on that are very much have been the story of your life. Like these loops, these patterns, these behaviors have very much been the story of your life for the past decades, couple of years, whatever it might be. They've been your story. And you feel very strongly associated with these patterns, with these loops, with these feelings. So that all of these behaviors, all of these memories, these emotional memories have been ingrained into who you are as a person. And we'll say that's your identity, right? That is identity 1, let's call it. And then there's identity 2. Identity 2 is I don't want to use the word idealize, because idealize makes it seem like it's never going to happen. But identity 2 is the version of yourself that is maximized, let's call it. This is the version of yourself that shows up in the world exactly the way that you want to show up. This is the version of yourself that, communicates exactly the way that you want to communicate. This is the kind of version of yourself that shows up in the room and you have that gravity around you that people just can't help but notice you. That's identity number 2. A key aspect and a key part of forming identity number 2 is that you have to get yourself into a mental and emotional state where you can really resonate and feel what it's like to be identity 2. You must actually get yourself to that place where you basically, even if just briefly for a moment or for a few moments, you are that identity. And again, this still applies even if you're somebody that's already quite successful. If you're a 7-figure entrepreneur, don't you want to become an 8 and eventually a 9 and eventually a 10 and who knows, right? Figure entrepreneur? You obviously do, right? If you have a growth-oriented mindset. If you're somebody that has already achieved a certain level of status and fame, don't you want to impact and inspire and influence more people? I'm assuming you do, again, if you have that growth mindset. So anything that has held you back, all of that stuff is identity number 1. Anything that stops you from communicating at the highest level, from having the impact and the presence that causes people to gravitate towards you, you put all that in identity 1. And then identity 2 is the one that's maximized. Identity 2 is the one that's calm and collected and nonchalant and decisive and commanding and powerful and influential and, emotionally intelligent and has that gravity around them. That's identity 2. Quick interruption, guys. If you want to work with me one-on-one, if you want to take your communication skills to an elite level, if you're already doing well, you're a 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneur, and you want to stand out in any social situation, you want to stand out in any business situation, in any negotiation, click on the link in the description, see if you qualify to work with me, and let's talk. Now, this exercise that you can engage in order to permanently shift from one identity to another identity is that you see the two identities together standing face to face. They're standing across from each other. And initially, you're going to be in the eyes and the mind of identity 1. You're going to see the world. You're going to see, you're going to see the landscape from those eyes, and you're going to be looking at identity 2. And this is when the switch starts to happen. You look at how they dress. You look at their body language. You look at, maybe you can imagine them walking into a room or saying something, and you see the way in which they impress people and the way in which their words carry this weight, and you feel it. And you yourself are impressed by this identity because you're observing it right now from the standpoint of identity 1. And then as you're doing that, you get more and more and more into the psyche of identity 2. You're getting into the psyche of identity 2. You keep observing them. You keep watching them. You keep, defining them. Oh, this is how they dress. Oh, this is how they talk. Oh, this is their swagger. Oh, this is, the way that they move, their body language, the nuances in their facial expressions, the calm, relaxed demeanor in which they carry themselves. You start seeing those things very clearly. And then, because you're standing right across them, you start to make the transition. And then you jump into the eyes and the perspective and the mind of identity 2. And you start feeling so anchored to the lifestyle, to the life, to the outcomes, to the future that you want. You see yourself so fully in the eyes and the mind of identity 2, and then you look at identity 1 and you forgive identity 1. You thank identity 1 because identity 1 has gotten you here. And irrespective of how proud you are or how proud you aren't of where you've gotten thus far, you have to thank identity 1 in order to switch to identity 2, because identity 2 would not exist without identity 2. Sorry, identity 2 would not exist without identity 1. So you must thank it. You say, thank you. Thank you for everything. And I forgive you. I forgive you for all the patterns and all the pains and all the, the frustrations. And I forgive you for all that kind of stuff. And I'm thankful for you. And then you just keep in that state. You charge yourself. You anchor that into your body where you feel what it's like to be identity 2. And you essentially have to witness the death of identity 1. You must allow identity 1 to burn and to die. You must allow it to die, because the second that you allow it to burn and you allow it to die is when you can fully exist as identity 2. You must let it just go. Let it evaporate, let it become nothing, let it just be gone. Now, I'll tell you guys from my experience, I experienced this just, recently, this burning up of my old identity. And I'd felt like I'd been in kind of this liminal space in between identity 1 and identity 2. Not quite identity 1, but also not quite identity 2. Just kind of hip hopping in between the two. Sometimes, some days are more identity 1, some days are much more identity 2. I made this decision, and I made this switch, and I made this transition fully. And I fully grieved and not even grieved, I achieved closure for the death of identity 1. And I've never felt so grounded in identity 2 before in my entire life. I have no doubt in my mind that I'll never go back to identity 1. Now, does this mean that I can't experience negative patterns, the patterns of identity 1 to some degree? No, it doesn't mean that I can't experience these things. And that's because identity 1 has led to identity 2. Identity 1 and identity 2 are intertwined in some way, but then identity 2 may evolve into identity 3 and identity 4, right? You always have to be open-minded and understand that there's always new levels to ascend to. But every time you want to ascend to a new level, it requires a burning up of everything before. Kind of like a peace offering to the world of like, thank you. Thank you for these experiences. Thank you for these lessons. I'm ready for a higher plane of elevation. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and we'll talk soon.